My career ended in seconds when the new CEO sneered at me in front of our biggest investors. He thought I was disposable, a glorified dictionary. He didn't know the deal depended entirely on my reputation. I didn't scream. I just watched him destroy a $5 billion future with one handshake he refused to give. Before the story continues, tell me where you're watching from today and what's the temperature. I'm reading every comment. This is the story of how arrogance cost a man his career and how silence can be the loudest revenge. The air in the private dining room of Le Cercle smelled of aged mahogany, truffle oil, and anxiety. It was 7:45 p.m. on a Tuesday, and the silence was heavy enough to crush a man. I adjusted my tie, checking the knot in the reflection of a crystal water goblet. It was perfect. It had to be. Tonight was the culmination of 3 years of my life. The contract on the table wasn't just a deal. It was a $5 billion bridge between our firm, Distinct Tech Solutions, and Takahashi Heavy Industries, the Japanese conglomerate that practically owned the logistics sector in East Asia. I sat to the left of the empty chair at the head of the table. That chair belonged to Albert Scott, our new CEO. He was 20 minutes late. Across from me sat Mr. Tanaka, the 70-year-old patriarch of Takahashi. His face was a mask of polite patience, but I saw the micro-tension in his jaw. In Japanese business culture, punctuality isn't just a rule. It is a direct reflection of your soul's discipline. Being late is an insult. Being 20 minutes late is a declaration of war. "Young son," Tanaka said softly, his voice like gravel rolling over silk. "Perhaps the traffic in this city is more difficult than I recall?" I bowed my head slightly, careful not to break eye contact too abruptly. "The city is unpredictable, Tanaka-san. But I am certain Mr. Rockdrocht Scott is doing everything in his power to be here, to honor you." I lied. I knew exactly where Albert Scott was. My phone had buzzed 5 minutes ago with a text from Hannah, the head of HR and one of the few people in the office I actually trusted. He's still in the lobby taking a call. Something about his golf swing analysis. Brace yourself. I forced a calm smile. I was 48 years old, and for the last 15 of them, I had been the Director of International Relations. The titles didn't matter tonight. Tonight, I was the bridge. I spoke the language, yes, but more importantly, I knew the code. I knew that you never pour your own drink. I knew that you receive a business card with 2 hands. I knew that trust was built in decades and destroyed in seconds. At 7:58 p.m., the double doors swung open with a violence that made the candle flames dance. Albert Scott walked in. He was 42, wearing a suit that cost more than my first car, but he wore it like armor rather than clothing. He didn't look apologetic. He looked energized, like he had just finished a Peloton workout rather than keeping $5 billion waiting. "Gentlemen," Scott boomed, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. He didn't mow. He didn't nod. He walked straight to the head of the table, pulling out his chair with a screech of wood against wood. Apologies for the delay. Had to fire a vendor who tried to nickel and dime me. "You know how it is, right? Business is war." The silence from the Japanese side of the table was absolute. It was a vacuum. Mr. Tanaka didn't blink. He looked at me. I gave a microscopic nod, a signal that said, "I am here. I will handle this." "Mr. Table." "Scott," I began, keeping my voice low and measured, shifting instantly into Japanese to translate his arrival into something palatable. "Mr. Scott expresses his deepest regret for the delay and is honored by your patience. He has been handling urgent matters to ensure the stability of our future partnership." Tanaka's eyes softened slightly. He understood the game. He knew I was sanitizing the disrespect. Scott looked at me, frowning. "What did you say, Nathan?" "Keep it verbatim. I don't need you softening my edge. They need to know they're dealing with a tiger, not a kitten." My stomach turned. "I was merely conveying your apologies, Albert." "I didn't apologize," Scott snapped, grabbing a bread roll and tearing it in half. "I explained. There's a difference. Now, let's get drinks. I want the most expensive scotch they have." "Do they have that hibiki stuff, or is that too cliché?" He looked at the waiter. "Hipel. Bottle of the good stuff. Chop." I closed my eyes for a fraction of a second. This wasn't just bad manners. It was a systematic dismantling of every protocol I had spent months establishing. Tanaka was a man of tradition. He valued humility above profit. Scott was treating him like a vendor at a tech expo. "Albert," I whispered, leaning in, Mr. Tanaka does not drink hard liquor before the meal is served. It is customary to start with stop, Scott interrupted, holding up a hand. He didn't look at me. He was staring at his phone, checking a stock ticker. I read a blog post about doing business in Asia on the plane. I know what I'm doing. Stop trying to babysit me, Nathan. You're here to translate words, not culture. Stick to the script. I felt a cold prickle of dread at the base of my neck. The script? There was no script for this. We were walking on a tightrope over a canyon, and Albert Scott had just pulled out a pair of scissors. By the time the appetizers arrived, a delicate sashimi platter that Scott poked at with his fork like it was roadkill. The atmosphere was toxic. Mr. Tanaka had said very little. He was observing. That was his greatest weapon. He watched how Scott treated the waiters. He watched how Scott checked his smartwatch every 3 minutes. And most importantly, he watched how Scott treated me. So, Scott said, his mouth full of tuna, let's talk numbers. 5 billion. It's a big number. But frankly, looking at your logistics chain, I think we can squeeze another 10% in efficiency if we cut out your legacy workers. Too much dead weight. I froze. Legacy workers in Tanaka's company meant employees who had been there for 30 or 40 years. In Japan, lifetime employment was a badge of honor, a reciprocal loyalty between employer and employee. Suggesting they were dead weight was like insulting a man's family. I turned to Tanaka. I couldn't translate that. I couldn't. Mr. Scott suggests that our software can help optimize your workflow to support your long-standing staff, making their jobs easier. I said in Japanese, my heart hammering against my ribs. Tanaka smiled, a thin, knowing expression. You are a kind man, young son. But I speak enough English to know the word dead weight. My blood ran cold. He knew. Scott looked between us, oblivious. What's he saying? Is he agreeing? He looks like he's agreeing. Good. Tell him I want the contract signed by dessert. I have a flight to Cabo in the morning. Albert, I said, dropping the formality, we cannot rush this. The signing ceremony is scheduled for tomorrow. To demand it now, over dinner, is disrespectful. It implies we don't trust them to honor their word. Scott slammed his fork down. The sound rang out like a gunshot. Disrespectful. He laughed, a harsh barking sound. You know what's disrespectful? You questioning me in front of the clients. I'm the CEO, Nathan. You are a tool I use to speak to these people. Do not confuse your utility with authority. He stood up, wiping his mouth with a napkin and throwing it onto the table. He walked around to Mr. Tanaka, extending a hand. Tanaka-san, Scott said loudly, slowing his speech down as if speaking to a child. Let's cut the crap. Shake on it now. Deal? Mr. Tanaka remained seated. He didn't look at Scott's hand. He looked at me. Yang-san, Tanaka said, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of a mountain. Does this man speak for the heart of your company, or do you? I stood up. Mr. Tanaka, sit down, Scott roared. He turned on me, his face red. I've had enough of you undercutting me. You think because you've been here 20 years you run the show? You're a relic, Nathan. A dinosaur. He turned back to the investors, gesturing at me with a dismissive wave. Ignore him. He's just the translator. He doesn't make decisions. He just repeats what I say. Frankly, I don't even know why we pay him a director's salary. The room went dead silent. Just the translator, Tanaka repeated, the English words feeling foreign and heavy on his tongue. Exactly, Scott said, thinking he had won. In fact, you know what? I'm making an executive decision. We need a fresh start. Nathan, you're fired. Pack your things tomorrow. We'll get an app to translate the rest of this. I felt the blood drain from my face. I wasn't angry. I was in shock. 15 years, billions of dollars in deals negotiated. And I was being fired over a sashimi platter by a man who didn't know the difference between a bow and a nod. You can't do that, Albert, I said quietly. I just did, he sneered. Get out, now. I don't want you in this room. I looked at Mr. Room. I looked at Mr. Tanaka. I bowed deeply, a full 90 degrees, holding it for 3 seconds. It was a bow of apology, of farewell, and of deep, profound shame. I am sorry, I said in Japanese. Then I straightened my jacket, turned my back on the $5 billion table, and walked toward the door. My hand was on the brass handle of the restaurant door when I heard the sound. It was the scraping of chairs. Not one chair. 8 of them. I stopped and turned around. Mr. Tanaka had stood up. Behind him, his 7 executives rose in perfect unison, like a single organism. They were gathering their briefcases. Scott looked confused. He was still standing there with his hand extended, looking like a statue of arrogance beginning to crack. Whoa, where are you going? The dessert cart is coming. We haven't signed. Mr. Tanaka walked past Scott as if he were a ghost. He didn't even look at him. He walked straight toward me. The restaurant was silent. Other diners had stopped eating to watch. Mr. Tanaka stopped 2 feet in front of me. He looked into my eyes, searching for something. He must have found it because he nodded. "Young San," he said, his English crisp and clear. "My father taught me that business is not about money. It is about people. If a company does not value the man who holds the bridge will collapse." He reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a heavy, gold-embossed fountain pen. The pen he had brought specifically to sign the contract. He held it out to me. "Please," he said, "keep this as a gift for your years of honor." I took the pen. My hands were trembling. "Tanaka-san, the contract." He turned slowly to look at Albert Scott. Scott was pale now, sweat beading on his forehead. The reality of what was happening was finally piercing his thick skull. "There is no contract," Tanaka said, his voice cold enough to freeze the wine in the glasses. "Takahashi Industries does not do business with those who have no honor. We do not do business with—" "How did you say?" "Just the help." "Wait," Scott stammered, stepping forward. "You can't just walk out. We have a verbal agreement. This is a $5 billion deal. You need our software." Tanaka paused. He looked back at me, a small, mischievous glint in his eye. "We needed young San's software. Without him, you have nothing but code. And code without understanding is useless." With that, he bowed to me, a deep, respectful bow, typically reserved for equals or superiors. His team bowed in unison. Then they walked out the door, leaving me standing there with the pen in my hand. I looked back at the table. Albert Scott was standing alone in the center of the wreckage he had created. His face was a contorted mix of rage and terror. He looked at me, his eyes bulging. "Fix this," he hissed. "Get them back. Now." I looked at the heavy oak door where the investors had just exited. I looked at the gold pen in my hand. Then I looked at my watch. It was 8:15 p.m. "I can't, Albert," I said, my voice steady for the first time all night. "Why the hell not?" he screamed, veins popping in his neck. "Because," I said, opening the door to leave, "I don't work here anymore." I walked out into the cool night air. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a plan. But as I watched the taillights of Mr. Tanaka's limousine disappear into traffic, I realized I had something Albert Scott would never understand. I had the pen, and I had a feeling this wasn't over. The next morning, the office felt like a mausoleum. The news of the failed deal hadn't officially broken, but bad news in a corporation travels faster than light. It travels at the speed of gossip. When I swiped my badge at the turnstile, the light flashed red. "Access denied." I wasn't surprised. Scott was petty. He wouldn't just fire me. He would try to erase me. I stood there for a moment, the hum of the lobby feeling distant, like I was underwater. Security guard Mike, a guy I'd exchanged pleasantries with every morning for 10 years, walked over. He wouldn't look me in the eye. "I'm sorry, Mr. Young," he muttered, staring at his boots. "I have orders. You're not allowed on the floor, Ms. Warder's-life. You're not allowed on the floor. Hannah from HR is bringing your things down." "It's okay, Mike," I said softly. "You're just doing your job." 5 minutes later, the elevator dinged. Hannah stepped out, carrying a single, pathetic cardboard box. She looked furious. Her eyes were rimmed with red, and she walked with a stiff military gait that told me she was holding back an explosion. She shoved the box into my hands. "Here, your plants, your photo of your kids, and your Employee of the Decade plaque. I thought you might want to use it as a coaster." "Thanks, Hannah," I said, managing a weak smile. She leaned in, dropping her voice to a whisper. "He's in a panic, Nathan. He's been screaming at legal since 6 a.m. He's trying to spin it. He's telling the board you sabotaged the dinner, that you were drunk, that you insulted Tanaka." I felt a flash of heat in my chest. "He's lying." "I know," she hissed. "But he's the CEO. They're going to believe him unless we prove otherwise. Also," she looked around nervously before slipping a folded piece of paper into my shirt pocket, "don't read this here. Just go." Hannah, you could lose your job. I already lost my respect for this place last night, she said. Go, before he sees you. I walked out of the building, the cardboard box heavy in my arms. It was raining. Of course it was raining. I stood on the curb waiting for an Uber, feeling the cold water soak into my suit, the same suit I had worn to the dinner. I felt exposed, naked. Then my phone buzzed. A notification from the stock market app. Distinct Tech Solutions, DTS, down 4% in pre-market trading. The rumors were starting. I got into the car, clutching the box. I didn't go home. I gave the driver an address I hadn't visited in 3 years. A small, dimly lit office above a bakery in the garment district. I needed help. I needed a ghost. The sign on the door read simply, Woo Green Data Consulting. I knocked. We're closed, a voice yelled from inside. Unless you have Thai food or a warrant. It's Nathan, I called out. There was a pause, then the sound of 3 deadbolts unlocking in rapid succession. The door swung open. Oscar Green hadn't changed. He was still wearing a hoodie that looked like it had been through a war, and his office still smelled like ozone and stale coffee. He was surrounded by a fortress of monitors, servers humming in the corner like a hive of angry bees. Nathan Young, Oscar said, leaning against the doorframe. The man who speaks 5 languages but couldn't talk his way out of buying me a beer last time we met. You look like hell. I feel like hell, I said, stepping inside and putting the box on a stack of hard drives. I need a favor. You don't need a favor, Oscar said, walking back to his desk and spinning his chair around. You need a miracle. I saw the stock ticker. I saw the whispers on the blind forums. CEO melts down at sushi dinner. Translator blamed. That you. That's me. Oscar whistled. Albert Scott, I know the type. MBA from Wharton, soul from a Shark Tank. He thinks he can delete you. He's trying, I said. He's telling the board I was drunk. He's going to ruin my reputation, Oscar. If he pins this on me, I'll never work in this industry again. Oscar cracked his knuckles. So, what do you want to do? Sue him. That takes years. No, I said, pulling the folded paper Hannah had given me out of my pocket. I hadn't looked at it yet. I unfolded it now. It unfolded it now. It was a printout of an email from Albert Scott to his personal lawyer. Timestamp 11:30 p.m. last night. Subject, the Fall Guy body. We need to construct a narrative immediately. Young was unstable. We need to find something in his file, missed deadlines, complaints, anything. If we can't find it, manufacture it. The board cannot know I blew the Tanaka deal. Fix this. My hands shook. He's going to frame me. Oscar snatched the paper from my hand. He scanned it, his eyes narrowing. This is war. He turned to his keyboard. Okay, you want to play? Let's play. He wants to dig into your history? Let's dig into his. This guy has been CEO for 3 months. Before that, he was at a hedge fund that quietly imploded. I bet he left a trail. What are you going to do? I'm going to initiate the green maneuver, Oscar said, a wicked grin spreading across his face. I'm not just going to find dirt, Nathan. I'm going to find the entire landfill. But I need access. Did you keep your old laptop? They took it. Cloud backup? Maybe. But my credentials are revoked. Oscar laughed. Revoked? Oscar laughed. Revoked for a user? Sure. But didn't you tell me once that the IT guy, Kevin, owed you for getting his kid into that exchange program in Tokyo? I nodded slowly. Call him, Oscar said. Get me a backdoor. Give me 20 minutes inside the server, and I'll find out what Scott is really hiding. I pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over Kevin's name. This was it. Crossing the line. If I did this, there was no going back. I wasn't just a fired employee anymore. I was a saboteur. I thought about Mr. Tanaka. I thought about the dead weight comment. I thought about the handshake Scott refused to give. I pressed call. While Oscar worked his magic, typing at a speed that blurred his fingers, I sat on a beanbag chair in the corner, staring at the rain streaking the window. My phone buzzed again. It was Hannah. It's getting worse. He just called an emergency all-hands meeting. He's going to announce you're firing publicly. He's going to trash you to the whole company. I showed the text to Oscar. Perfect, Oscar said without looking up. Let him talk. The more he lies, the deeper he digs his grave. By the way, tell Hannah to record that meeting, audio only. Discreet. Why? Because, Oscar said, I just found something interesting in the company bylaws. Something about cause for termination and fiduciary duty. If he lies to the shareholders about why the deal failed, that's not just me, Nathan. That's fraud. 10 minutes later, Oscar spun his chair around. Got it. Got what? Scott's calendar, Oscar said. And his deleted emails. Turns out our boy Albert didn't just blow the deal because he's arrogant. He had a side bet. I stood up. What? Look at this, Oscar pointed to a string of emails. He was shorting his own company's stock. I stared at the screen. The numbers swam before my eyes. He wanted the stock to drop? Not permanently, Oscar explained. He wanted a dip. He wanted to create a crisis, blame it on the incompetent legacy staff, you, and then swoop in, save the deal later, and buy back the stock at a discount. He was gambling with the company's future to pad his own portfolio. I felt sick. He blew a $5 billion deal. On purpose? For a quick buck? No, Oscar corrected. He thought he could blow the deal temporarily. He thought Tanaka would come crawling back. He underestimated how much you matter. It didn't account for the walkout. My phone buzzed. An audio file from Hannah. Meeting recording.mp3. Oscar plugged it into his speakers. We listened. Scott's voice filled the room, tinny and distorted, but unmistakable. Team is with a heavy heart. I tell you that Nathan Young was let go today. His conduct at the dinner was erratic. He was intoxicated. He insulted Mr. Tanaka's family. I tried to salvage it, but the damage was done. We are cleaning up his mess. I listened to the lies, feeling a cold, hard stone form in my stomach. He called me a drunk, I whispered. I haven't touched alcohol in 10 years. We know that, Oscar said, and soon the board will know that too. But we can't just release this audio. It's he said, she said. We need the nuclear option. What's the nuclear option? Oscar turned to me, his face serious. You mentioned a clause, something in the original contract with Takahashi Industries. The compliance thing, the grandfather rights, I said. But that's technical. It's about software licensing. Nathan, Oscar said slowly, read the fine print. Who is the license holder? I frowned. The company, Distinct Tech Solutions. Are you sure? Oscar tapped a key, bringing up a PDF of a contract from 2008. Because according to this metadata, the Japanese legal registry doesn't list the company as the guarantor. It lists a specific individual as the cultural compliance officer. Without that officer, the license is void. He zoomed in on the name. Nathaniel J. Young. I stared at my name. I had forgotten about that. It was a formality years ago, a way to bypass some bureaucratic red tape in Osaka. Do you realize what this means? Oscar asked. It means. I started, the realization dawning on me. It means, Oscar finished, that Albert Scott didn't just fire an employee. He accidentally fired the software license. As of this morning, Distinct Tech Solutions is illegally using Takahashi's IP. Every minute their servers are running, they are committing international copyright theft. I looked at Oscar. He grinned. Shall we tell him? Oscar asked. No, I said, reaching for my phone. We don't tell him. We tell the investors. I dialed Mr. Tanaka's personal number. Mr. Tanaka picked up on the first ring. Young-san, he said. There was no surprise in his voice, only a calm anticipation. I was expecting your call. Tanaka-san, I said, leaning against Oscar's desk, my hand gripping the phone tight. I assume you are aware of the compliance clause in the 2008 master agreement? The one regarding the cultural guarantor? The low chuckle came through the receiver. Aware? Young-san, I wrote it. I knew that CEOs come and go like the seasons, but a man of integrity is rare. I wanted to ensure that if a day came when you were removed, our technology would not remain in the hands of tourists. Albert Scott fired me last night, I said, and publicly defamed me this morning. Then he has made a grave error, Tanaka replied. He has not only fired his director of relations, he has fired his license to operate our logistics algorithm. As of this moment, Distinct Tech Solutions is unauthorized to use the Takahashi source code. If you enforce that, I said, my voice dropping, the system goes dark. The entire North American logistics grid that relies on our software will freeze. The stock will tank. It is regrettable, Tanaka said, but honor must be satisfied. Would you like me to send the notification now? I looked at Oscar. He was watching me, a grin plastered on his face, his finger hovering over the enter key on his keyboard. Do it, I said. The call ended. I looked at Oscar. Turn on the news. 20 minutes later, the tremor hit. It started with a press release from Tokyo. It was polite, brief, and devastating. Takahashi Heavy Industries officially revokes the software license granted to Distinct Tech Solutions (DTS), effective immediately due to non-compliance with the Personnel Guarantee Clause. All usage of the BridgeLink algorithm must cease forthwith. I watched the screen. The ticker for DTS froze for a second, overwhelmed by sell orders. Then it dropped. It didn't slide. It plummeted. DTS 12%, the 18%, the 18%, the 18%, 25%. CNBC interrupted their segment on oil prices to cut to a breaking news alert. A breathless anchor appeared on screen. Bloodbath for Distinct Tech Solutions today. The stock is in freefall after a shocking announcement from their Japanese partners. Rumors are circulating that the new CEO, Albert Scott, botched a critical renewal. We're hearing reports that the company's core product might be legally unusable. Oster cackled. Look at the volume, it's a sell-off. The institutional investors are fleeing. Scott's little plan to dip the stock backfired. He wanted a 5% drop to buying cheap. He just got a 40% crash that's going to trigger a margin call on his own loans. My phone buzzed. It was Hannah. The alarms are going off. Literally. The server's just locked up. Scott is running down the hallway screaming for IT. He looks like he's having a heart attack. I felt a strange sense of detachment. I wasn't happy about the company suffering. Good people worked there, but the cancer had to be cut out, and Albert Scott was a malignant tumor. He's going to try to blame this on you, Oscar warned, pointing at the screen where a photo of Scott was now being displayed with the caption, CEO, under fire. He's going to say you sabotaged the code. Let him try, I said. The code didn't break. The contract did. Then the phone rang. It wasn't Hannah. It wasn't Mr. Tanaka. The caller ID read, Albert Scott, mobile. Oscar muted the TV. The room went silent, save for the hum of the servers and the relentless ringing of the phone. Don't answer yet, Oscar whispered. Let him sweat and let him think you're busy. I waited. 4 rings. 5, 6. On the 7th ring, I picked up. I didn't say hello. I just held the phone in my ear and breathed. Nathan! Scott's voice was high-pitched, bordering on hysterical. Nathan, pick up! I know you're there. I'm here, Albert, I said calmly. I'm surprised you have time to call. Shouldn't you be translating something? Shut up, he screamed. What did you do? What did you do to the system? Kevin in IT says we're locked out. He says it's a remote kill switch. It's not a kill switch, Albert. It's a license expiration. You fired the license holder. What are you talking about? I fired you. Exactly, I said. I am the license. Read the 2008 agreement, Clause 14, Section B. The continued employment of the cultural guarantor is a condition of the IP usage. You didn't just fire the translator. You unplugged the machine. There was a silence on the other end. I could hear him breathing heavily, the sound of paper being shuffled frantically. You booby-trapped the company, he whispered. I protected it, I corrected. From people like you. Tanaka-san knew that eventually, someone would come along who cared more about the share price than the product. He wanted to make sure that person couldn't steer the ship. Fix it, Scott demanded, though his voice lacked its usual power. It sounded desperate. Call Tanaka. Tell him it was a mistake. Tell him I was stressed. Tell him we're rehiring you. Double salary. Triple. Just get the servers back online before the market closes. I can't do that, Albert. Why not? Everyone has a price, Nathan. What's yours? $500,000? $1 million? My price, I said, was a handshake. My price was respect. You couldn't afford that last night, and you certainly can't afford it now. Listen to me, you old fool, Scott snarled, his arrogance trying to claw its way back to the surface. If you don't fix this, I will bury you. I have lawyers who will make it look like you embezzled funds. I will ruin your life. You're already trying to do that, I said. Hannah told me about the narrative you're building, the drunk translator story. I can retract that, he stammered. I can fix the PR. Just get the servers up. No, I said, I don't work for you anymore. And unlike you, I don't work for people I don't respect. Nathan, wait. I hung up. Oscar clapped slowly. Cold. Ice cold. I love it. He's not done, I said, staring at the phone. He's desperate. A desperate man doesn't stop. He escalates. Good, Oscar said, because I just finished decrypting his private drive. If he wants to escalate, we have the ammunition to blow him out of the water. An hour later, a courier bike skidded to a halt in front of the bakery downstairs. I watched from the window as a man in a helmet ran up the stairs and pounded on the door. He slid a thick envelope under the door and ran off. Oscar picked it up with 2 fingers, as if it were radioactive. Cease and desist, breach of contract, sabotage, corporate espionage. He whistled. He got the top firm. This must have cost him 10 grand just to draft. I opened the letter. It was brutal. It accused me of maliciously altering the software code. False. Conspiring with a foreign entity to devalue the company. Technically true but legally defensive, and demanding I appear for an emergency deposition or face immediate arrest. He's bluffing, Oscar said, reading over my shoulder. He knows he can't win in court because the contract is clear. He's trying to scare you into submission before the board meeting tonight. Tonight? Yeah, Oscar said. The board of directors called an emergency session for 8:00 p.m. They're panicking. Scott has until then to either fix the servers or explain why he lost $5 billion in 24 hours. He's going to present this letter to the board, I realized. He's going to show them he's taking action against the rogue employee. It might buy him time. Not if we send him something first, Oscar said. He pulled up the file he had found earlier, the short-selling data. Nathan, look at this. Scott didn't just short the stock. He used a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands, but he got lazy. He logged into the account from his work IP address, twice. I looked at the logs. There it was. Login CEO, Office Login CEO, Duster Office, Sucshare Wi-Fi, Score Office, the Score Sucshare Wi-Fi. This is insider trading, I said. This is federal prison time. Exactly, Oscar said. This is our shield. If he tries to sue you, we release this to the SEC. He knows that, but the board doesn't know, I said. So let's tell them, Oscar suggested. Send it to the chairman. I shook my head. No. If we email it, Scott might intercept it. He controls IT now. Or he might spin it as faked data from the guy he just fired for being a hacker. So what do we do? I looked at the legal threat in my hand. Then I looked at the clock. It was 6:30 p.m. The board meeting was in 90 minutes. We don't email it, I said, standing up and grabbing my coat. I'm going there. You're banned from the building, Oscar reminded me. Security Mike won't let you in. Mike is a good man, I said. And I have something Scott doesn't. What? I have the truth, I said, and I have the keys to the kingdom. If I walk in there, Scott has 2 choices. Arrest me and admit the software's tied to me, or let me speak. Oscar grabbed a USB drive and tossed it to me. Take the evidence, just in case he tries to wrestle you. I'm not going to wrestle him, Oscar, I said, buttoning my jacket. I'm going to finish the meeting he started. I walked to the door. Are you coming? Oscar grabbed his laptop. Are you coming? Oscar grabbed his laptop. Are you kidding? I wouldn't miss this for the world. Plus, you need someone to disable the security cameras in the lobby. We walked out into the rain. The final showdown wasn't going to be in a courtroom. It was going to be in the boardroom where I had spent 15 years building a company that Albert Scott destroyed in 15 minutes. The lobby of the Distinct Tech Solutions building was eerily quiet at 7:50 p.m. Usually, the night shift would be buzzing. Cleaners moving across the marble floors, security guards chatting near the elevators. Tonight, the atmosphere was thick with tension, like the air before a thunderstorm. I walked up to the turnstile. Mike was there, his face pale. He saw me approaching, then looked at the 2 suited men standing near the elevators, extra security Scott had hired. Mr. Young, Mike whispered as I got close. I'm supposed to call the cops if I see you. I know, Mike, I said, resting my hand on the turnstile, but if I don't go up there, none of us have jobs tomorrow. The company goes under at midnight. Mike looked at me, then at the hired goons. He reached under his desk and hit the manual override button. Click. The gate swung open. I didn't see anything, Mike muttered, turning his back to study a monitor. Thank you, I whispered. Oscar and I slipped past the hired security while they were distracted by a pizza delivery guy arguing about the address. We stepped into the elevator. I pressed the button for the 40th floor, the boardroom. The ride up took 30 seconds. In that time, I adjusted my tie, smoothed my jacket, took a deep breath. This wasn't just about my job anymore. It was about dignity. The elevator doors opened directly into the executive foyer. We could hear the shouting from down the hall. Unacceptable, Albert. The stock is down 40%. The Japanese are threatening to sue. That was Chairman Vance. It's sabotage. Albert Scott's voice was shrill, cracking under the pressure. It's Young. He planted a virus. I need authorization to have him arrested. I didn't knock. I pushed the heavy double doors open and walked in. The room went silent. 12 board members turned to stare. Albert Scott, who was standing at the head of the table sweating through his dress shirt, looked like he had seen a ghost. "Security!" Scott screamed, pointing a trembling finger at me. "Get him out!" He's the hacker. "I'm not a hacker, Albert," I said, my voice calm, projecting to the back of the room, "and I'm not a virus." I walked to the empty chair at the opposite end of the table, the seat reserved for the Director of International Relations. My seat. I placed the USB drive on the table with a soft clack. "Mr. Jua." "Chairman," I said, looking at Vance, "the system is not infected. It is locked, and it is locked because yesterday evening Mr. Scott violated the fundamental clause of our operating agreement with Takahashi Industries." "Lies!" Scott yelled, lunging forward. "He's trying to blackmail us." "Sit down, Albert," Chairman Vance barked. He looked at me with cold calculation. "Explain, Mr. Young. You have 5 minutes before I call the police myself." "You don't need police," I said. "You need a lawyer who reads the fine print. The BridgeLink software, the core of our logistics platform, is licensed, not owned. And that license has a condition called the Cultural Guarantor Clause." I pulled a folded document from my pocket, the one Oscar had printed, and slid it down the long mahogany table. "Takahashi Industries does not trust corporations," I continued. "They trust people. Specifically, they trust me. The license is legally tied to my employment. When Albert fired me without cause, he didn't just remove an employee. He voided the warranty. He broke the bridge." Vance picked up the document. He put on his reading glasses. The room was so quiet I could hear the hum of the air conditioning vents. "Oh my God," Vance whispered. "It's right here. Termination of the guarantor results in immediate revocation of usage rights." He looked up at Scott. The look in his eyes wasn't anger, it was disgust. "You didn't know this? You're the CEO. Did you not read the founding documents?" Scott stammered, his face turning a sickly shade of gray. It was legacy paperwork. Who reads contracts from 2008? It's archaic. I was modernizing the company." "You weren't modernizing it," I said. "You were stripping it for parts." Scott slammed his hands on the table. "This is ridiculous." "Okay, fine, so we hire him back. Is that what you want? What you want, Anthony? You want a raise? Fine. You rehired. Double salary. Now unlock the servers." He looked at the board, forcing a smile. "See? Problem solved. It's just a negotiation tactic." He's a shark. I respect that. I didn't smile. I looked at Oscar, who was standing by the door. Oscar nodded. "I'm afraid it's not that simple, Albert," I said. "I don't want my job back. Not under you. You don't have a choice." Scott sneered. "If you don't unlock it, the company dies and your stock options become worthless. You'll go down with the ship." "I sold my options 3 years ago," I said comfortably. "But you have a different position, don't you?" I picked up the USB drive and plugged it into the presentation laptop sitting on the table. "Mr. Chairman," I said, "before you decide how to handle the server issue, you should see why Mr. Scott was so eager to blow up the deal last night." I clicked the file. The projector screen behind Scott came to life. It wasn't a PowerPoint. It was a spreadsheet. A forensic accounting log of a shell company in the Cayman Islands. Account holder, A. Scott. Position, short sale, DTS, Distinct Tech Solutions, leverage 10x, target price $45 and ZERS. The board members leaned in. A collective gasp rippled through the room. "He's shorted us," Vance whispered, standing up slowly. His face was purple with rage. "You bet against your own company?" Scott turned around and saw the screen. He froze. He looked like a deer in headlights. If the deer was wearing a $5,000 suit and knew it was about to go to prison. That's fake," Scott stuttered. "That's deep fake data." "He forged it. It's logged from your IP address, Albert." Oscar spoke up from the doorway. "Specifically from your office yesterday at 4:00 p.m. while you were supposedly prepping for the dinner. We have the packet captures. You wanted the deal to fail temporarily," I explained, breaking it down for the board. "You wanted to crash the stock. blame it on legacy incompetence, buy back in at the bottom, and then fix the relationship with Tanaka to ride the recovery up. It was a classic pump and dump. You didn't realize the crash would be permanent because you didn't know about the clause. The room erupted. 3 board members were on their phones, presumably calling legal counsel. Chairman Vance walked over to the phone on the wall and dialed a 3-digit extension. "Security," Vance said, his eyes never leaving Scott. "Send a team to the boardroom. Immediately." Scott backed away from the table. "You can't do this!" "I'm the CEO. I have a golden parachute." "You have nothing," Vance said coldly. "This is gross negligence and criminal insider trading. Your contract is voided for cause. You're not getting a parachute, Albert. You're getting an indictment." The doors burst open. It wasn't the hired goons this time. It was Mike and 2 other company guards, the men who had worked there for 20 years. The men Scott had ignored. "Escort Mr. Scott from the building," Vance ordered, "and confiscate his phone and laptop." Mike stepped forward, a grim satisfaction on his face. "Mr. Scott, if you'll come with me." Scott looked at me. His eyes were wide, filled with a mixture of hatred and confusion. He still didn't understand how he had lost to the help. "You're a relic, Nathan," he spat as Mike grabbed his arm. "You're obsolete." "Maybe," I said, picking up the gold pen Mr. Tanaka had given me, the one I had placed on the table next to the USB drive. "But tonight, I'm the only one here who can turn the lights back on." Mike dragged him out. The shouting faded down the hallway. When the doors closed, silence returned to the boardroom. Chairman Vance looked at me. He looked tired. "The servers, Nathan," he said softly. "Can you fix them?" "I can," I said. "But we need to make a call to Tokyo first. And this time, I'll be doing the talking." 2 weeks later, the air was different. I wasn't in the boardroom. I was sitting on a wooden veranda overlooking a koi pond in a private estate just outside of Kyoto. The air smelled of rain and matcha. Across from me sat Mr. Tanaka. He poured tea from a cast-iron pot, his movements precise and fluid. "The market has stabilized," Tanaka said, placing the cup in front of me. "Your chairman, Mr. Vance, is a reasonable man. He understands that the new terms are necessary." "He didn't have much choice," I said, taking the cup with both hands. The life twist wasn't just that I got my job back, it was that the job didn't exist anymore. When the dust settled, the board realized they couldn't risk the cultural guarantor clause ever being triggered again. They couldn't employ me because an employee can be fired. So they did the only thing they could. They spun off the international division. I wasn't the director anymore. I was the owner of an independent consulting firm that held the exclusive license to the Takahashi interface. Distinct Tech Solutions had to pay me a licensing fee to use the software. I was no longer an expense on their balance sheet. I was their landlord. "And Mr. Scott?" Tanaka asked, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "Indicted," I said. "The SEC investigation is ongoing. He's currently out on bail, but his assets are frozen. I heard he's trying to sell his golf clubs on eBay." Tanaka laughed, a genuine warm sound. "Arrogance is a heavy burden, young son. Arrogance is a heavy burden, young son. It is good he has set it down." He raised his cup. "To the bridge." "To the bridge," I replied, clinking my cup against his. We drank in silence, watching the rain ripple the surface of the pond. I thought about the last 15 years. I thought about the late nights, the missed birthdays, the stress. And then I thought about the moment Mike opened the turnstile for me. I realized then that my power didn't come from the contract. It came from the people I had treated with respect when no one was watching. Before I go, I want to share something with you. I spent 20 years thinking that if I just did my job, kept my head down, and was loyal, the system would protect me. I was wrong. The system protects itself. Albert Scott proved that. He looked at my gray hair and saw liability. He looked at my kindness and saw weakness. But here is the mistake he made, and the mistake I almost made too. Never confuse your title with your value. Your title is what they call you. Your value is what happens when you leave. If you are in a job right now where you feel invisible, remember this. Make yourself the bridge. Build relationships with the people who actually run the place, the secretaries, the IT guys, the security guards. Learn the things the bosses are too arrogant to learn. And most importantly, keep your receipts. Document your wins. Understand your contracts. because when the day comes that someone tries to erase you, you want to be able to stand up, look them in the eye, and say, I am not just the help, I am the key. Don't let them break you. Make them pay the price of admission. If this story of justice touched you, please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, stay sharp.